"Mom, please help me." Those were the words I heard in the dead of night, trembling on the lips of my daughter, who just 3 months ago had walked down the aisle, radiant with joy, starting what we had all believed was her happy ever after. But now, as I opened the door to her sudden desperate visit at 2 a.m., I couldn't recognize the person in front of me. Her face, my beautiful Leighton's face, was disfigured with bruises, her eyes red and puffy from crying, her lower lip split and trembling. I froze, overwhelmed by a cold, creeping horror that rooted me to the spot. What on earth had happened to her? I barely had time to process her appearance before she collapsed into my arms. Her body shook with sobs as I pulled her into the house, guiding her to the couch, gently stroking her hair like I used to when she was a child crying over a scraped knee. But this was no scraped knee. As she began to talk in a halting, broken voice, the story that unfolded before me ignited a fire in my chest. Anger surged in waves so intense it made me tremble. I clenched my fists, fighting the urge to scream. This was not something I could forgive, not when the very people who had promised to cherish and care for my daughter had instead crushed her spirit and shattered her trust. They had lied. Every word, every vow, every smile had been a facade. My name is Susanna. I'm 50 years old. I've lived a quiet, hard-working life, most of it as a single mother. I raised Leighton alone after divorcing my husband when she was still a little girl. It wasn't easy. I worked full-time while juggling school runs, lunches, doctor appointments, and late-night homework sessions. There were days when I came home so exhausted I couldn't even eat, collapsing into bed only to do it all again the next day. But Leighton gave my life purpose. Her quiet resilience and steady heart became my anchor. She wasn't loud or outspoken, but she was fiercely determined and kind, with a work ethic that put most adults to shame. Watching her grow into a capable, thoughtful woman had been the greatest joy of my life. So when, one afternoon, she came home looking nervous, yet excited, and said, "Mom, there's someone I want you to meet," I felt that familiar flutter in my chest. My little girl was in love. The man she brought home was named Carter. He worked for one of Leighton's client companies and was 7 years older than her. He wore a sharp navy suit and carried himself with a polished confidence. His smile seemed genuine, his manners impeccable, and his voice calm and reassuring. "It's an honor to meet you, ma'am," he said with a slight bow. I offered a polite smile in return, still trying to get a read on him. "I've come today to ask for your blessing," he said after only a few minutes of small talk, "for Leighton and me to get married." My eyebrows lifted in surprise. Married? Already? They had only been dating for 6 months, and Leighton was still just 23. I had expected to meet her boyfriend, maybe share a cup of tea, not receive a marriage proposal from a near stranger. "Well," I began, trying to sound calm, "you're both still young. Don't you think it might be a little early to be thinking about such a serious commitment?" But Carter didn't waver. He sat up straighter and looked me dead in the eye. "I know how this sounds," he said, "but I can't imagine a future without Leighton. I've never met someone like her. She makes me want to be a better man." His sincerity caught me off guard. It wasn't just words. He spoke like someone who truly believed what he was saying. Leighton's eyes shimmered with emotion as she added softly, "Mom, I feel the same. Please, give us your blessing." How could I say no, looking at the two of them sitting there with so much hope in their eyes? I gave them my consent, though a tiny knot of anxiety twisted in my stomach. Carter looked so pleased. "Thank you so much. I promise I'll make her happy." They held hands and smiled at each other, and I tried to smile too, to mirror their joy. But inside, something tugged at me. An instinct, a warning I didn't fully understand. After Carter left that day, I sat alone in the quiet of the living room, my tea gone cold on the table beside me. I should have been happy. My daughter was in love, getting married to a man who clearly adored her. So why did I feel so uneasy? The wedding preparations went smoothly. I met Carter's parents, who seemed friendly and warm. They didn't have any daughters and welcomed Leighton like she was the missing piece of their family puzzle. "We've always wanted a daughter," Carter's mother told me with a wide smile. "She's perfect." Still, I noticed how quickly they suggested Leighton move in with them after the wedding. "She'll be like our own child," they said. Leighton herself seemed perfectly content with the idea. "Carter will be there, and I get along well with his parents," she reassured me. I was wary, of course. "Living with in-laws can be tough," I cautioned. "Are you sure about this?" But she smiled and said, "I'll be fine. I want to make it work." And maybe I believed her. She'd always been able to win over adults with her sincerity and her calm nature. I reasoned that if anything went wrong, their family home was just a 20-minute drive from mine. I could be there in an instant. So I watched my daughter walk down the aisle in a beautiful lace gown, watched as Carter kissed her hand during their vows, as his parents wept tears of joy. I smiled and clapped and toasted their future like everyone else, but a voice deep within me kept whispering, "Is this really okay?" The first few weeks passed without incident. Leighton texted me occasionally with updates about cooking meals, how she was slowly adjusting to life with Carter's family. Then the messages slowed down. I brushed it off as newlywed busyness. But then days went by with nothing from her. I texted her. No reply. I waited. Still nothing. I didn't want to be the overbearing mother, so I decided to call. The phone rang, and to my surprise, Carter answered. "Oh, hi," he said casually. "She's in the bath right now, but don't worry, she's doing fine." Something about his voice made me uneasy. There was nothing inherently wrong with his tone. It was polite, calm, but it felt like a door being quietly closed in my face. I didn't get to speak to Leighton. He hung up soon after with a dismissive, "Take care." More days passed. No calls, no replies. The silence weighed on me like a stone on my chest. I decided to go see her. Carter's mother had once told me to visit any time, so I showed up on a Saturday afternoon, hopeful. Her voice through the intercom was curt. "She's out with Carter." "I'm sorry for dropping by unannounced," I said. "Do you know what time they'll be back?" There was a long pause and then a deep sigh. "You should call before coming." I stood there on the doorstep, feeling like a trespasser. I hadn't even seen my daughter's face. All I wanted was to know that she was okay. Something was wrong. I felt it in my bones. The warmth they had shown before the wedding was gone, replaced by a cold, dismissive wall. Still unsure of what I could do, I called her workplace, desperate to hear something, anything about her. The receptionist sounded confused. "Leighton?" "Oh, she resigned a while ago. Very suddenly, actually. It caught us off guard." "What?" My mind spun. That wasn't possible. Leighton loved that job. It was her dream. We had cried together when she got the offer. She had been thrilled about balancing her career and married life. Why would she give it all up? Unless she hadn't. Unless someone else had done it for her. As dread pooled in my chest, I considered calling the police. I didn't have proof. I didn't even know where to begin. But before I could act, she came back to me. 2 nights later, the doorbell rang at 2 a.m. again. When I opened the door and saw her, everything inside me broke. The days that followed were a blur of whispered conversations, warm meals, and long silences that filled every corner of our home. Leighton had moved back into her old bedroom, though she was no longer the girl who had once dreamed of fairy tale weddings and bright futures. She had returned to me as a woman who had seen too much, too quickly. A woman hollowed out by betrayal and control. She didn't say much those first few days, only that she was glad to be home and that she didn't want to talk about the past. I respected that. She spent most of her time sitting in the garden, staring at the wind moving through the trees, occasionally petting our old dog, her thoughts wrapped in shadows. But when the time came, she finally opened up, not with tears or hysteria, but with a quiet, chilling calm that shook me more than anything else ever could have. She told me how, from the moment she moved into Carter's family home, things had changed. What began as warmth and affection quickly dissolved into manipulation disguised as care. Carter had been charming, yes, but beneath that charm lay something cold and calculating. He and his parents had slowly stripped away her freedom, at first subtly, then with increasing force. They insisted she quit her job, saying a good wife didn't need to work, that Carter's income was more than enough. They canceled plans she made without consulting them, restricted her phone use, controlled what she wore, and even monitored what she ate. When she resisted or questioned anything, they gaslighted her, accusing her of being selfish, disobedient, or ungrateful. Carter's parents weren't passive bystanders. They were active participants in the emotional warfare. His mother would lecture her about her duty as a wife, criticizing her appearance, her tone of voice, even the way she walked. His father rarely spoke but watched her constantly, a presence that never let her feel at ease. Over time, they wore her down. Isolated from her friends and me, without a job or financial independence, she became a shadow of herself. Carter stopped pretending to be kind once she had nowhere else to go. He began using his voice like a weapon, slicing into her with insults, sometimes throwing things, occasionally pushing her hard enough to leave bruises. It hadn't happened all at once. It was gradual, methodical, like boiling a frog alive. But by the time she realized how deep she had sunk, she felt trapped, terrified, and entirely alone. Listening to her, I had to clench my hands so tightly my knuckles ached. Rage roared in my chest like a beast that wanted out, but I stayed quiet. This wasn't the time to explode. This was about her, not me. My job now was to be the mother she needed. When she was finished speaking, I gathered her into my arms and told her again and again, "You're safe. You're home. You did the right thing." And she cried. Not the wild sobs from the night she returned, but slow, silent tears that rolled down her cheeks like rain falling from a still sky. She had carried that pain in silence for so long, it had hardened into something heavy inside her, and now it was finally beginning to dissolve. The next week, I called a lawyer. Then I contacted a therapist who specialized in trauma recovery. Leighton hesitated at first, but she agreed to go. The woman she met there became a lifeline, a guide helping her pick up the shattered pieces and reassemble them with care. Slowly, week by week, I watched color return to her face, saw a flicker of steel in her spine. She began journaling. She started taking long walks. She helped me cook dinner and even laughed, really laughed, one evening when we burnt the rice and had to order pizza. That laugh was like sunlight breaking through a thunderstorm. I knew then that she was still in there, my Leighton. Not broken, just bruised. Bent, but unbowed. But there was one thing left to do. Something that couldn't be healed through therapy or time alone. She needed closure. She needed to face them, not for their sake, but for hers. We decided to go together. I didn't trust myself to be civil, but I would never let her do this alone. When we showed up at their doorstep, Carter opened the door, his expression flickering between shock and panic. "Leighton? What the hell? I'm not here for you," she said, voice steady, calm. "I'm here for me." Behind him, his mother stepped forward, mouth already twisted in a false smile. "Darling, what happened? We were so worried." Leighton didn't even blink. "Save it." She told them in no uncertain terms that she would never return, that their manipulation and cruelty were now documented and being handled legally. She made it clear that if they ever tried to contact her again, there would be consequences. Carter tried to argue, but the strength in her voice shut him down. His parents stood there, stunned, as the woman they thought they had destroyed stood tall and walked away without a backward glance. We didn't speak much on the drive home. She stared out the window, and I glanced at her every few seconds, wondering if she was okay. Then she said softly, "I feel free." That night, we sat outside under the stars, wrapped in blankets, sipping warm tea. She turned to me and said, "Thank you, Mom, for everything. If you hadn't opened that door, I don't know where I'd be." I smiled, brushing a lock of hair from her face. "You saved yourself, sweetheart. I just opened the door. You ran through it." And that's when I knew, truly knew, that my daughter wasn't just healing. She was rising, stronger than before, fiercer, wiser. The fire they tried to extinguish had not gone out. It had simply gone quiet, waiting for the right time to burn again. And now it was blazing,